You keep wondering why you feel exhausted, distracted, and strangely empty. Yet you refuse to cut away the very people, habits, and obligations that are feeding on your energy. That is your first mistake. You are trying to protect your peace while leaving the doors wide open for everything that steals it. You call it loyalty. You call it kindness. You call it responsibility. But beneath those comforting labels lies something far uglier: fear. Fear of disappointing others. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of standing alone. This is the brutal truth. Peace is never stolen. It is surrendered. Every time you tolerate disrespect to avoid conflict, every time you answer a call you didn't want to answer, every time you explain yourself to someone who has already decided not to understand you, you trade another piece of your peace for temporary approval. And approval is one of the cheapest currencies in the world. It is handed out freely, then taken away the moment you stop entertaining people. Robert Greene understood this long before most people ever noticed it. The powerful do not merely acquire influence. They protect their minds from unnecessary invasion. Law 16 tells you to use absence to increase respect and honor. Most people hear that law and immediately think about romance or business. They miss the deeper lesson. Absence is not just a strategy for influence. It is a weapon for survival. Sometimes disappearing is the only way to save the parts of yourself that constant exposure is destroying. Think about water and diamonds. Water is essential for life, yet because it is everywhere, people waste it without thinking. Diamonds serve almost no practical purpose, yet because they are scarce, people lock them away, admire them, and assign extraordinary value to them. Your attention works exactly the same way. If everyone has unlimited access to your time, your emotions, and your availability, your presence becomes ordinary. Worse, it becomes expected. People stop appreciating what they never have to earn. You complain that people only call when they need something. Have you trained them to do anything else? You answer every message immediately. You solve every crisis. You volunteer before anyone asks. You become the emergency exit for people who never intend to rebuild the burning building. Eventually, you are no longer a person. You become a convenience. This is where many lives quietly collapse. Not through one dramatic betrayal, but through 1,000 tiny concessions. One favor becomes another. One sacrifice becomes a lifestyle. One compromise becomes your identity. Before long, you wake up feeling like a stranger inside your own life, because every decision has been made around everyone else's comfort, instead of your own purpose. Let's talk about the addiction to being needed. It hides behind generosity, but its roots often grow from insecurity. Being needed feels safer than being respected because respect can exist from a distance, while need creates dependency. You convince yourself that if people rely on you, they won't leave. Yet, dependency never creates genuine loyalty. It creates consumption. People consume what is available. They rarely protect it. Imagine a tree standing in the middle of a crowded village. Every traveler breaks off a branch for firewood. Every child carves initials into its bark. Every animal scratches against it. Year after year, the tree gives and gives until one day it can no longer stand. Then everyone wonders why it fell. Nobody asks how many pieces had already been taken before it collapsed. You are becoming that tree. Greene warned against revealing too much of yourself, because familiarity breeds contempt. But there is another layer hidden beneath that principle. Constant availability breeds entitlement. The more people expect access to you, the angrier they become when access is denied. Notice how quickly someone's attitude changes when you finally say no. Suddenly you are selfish. Suddenly you have changed. No, you have simply stopped allowing them to borrow pieces of your life without paying attention to the cost. Listen carefully. Niceness is often just a disguise for cowardice. That sentence makes people uncomfortable because it exposes motives they spend years hiding from themselves. Many acts of kindness are beautiful, but many others are negotiations. You give because you hope they will stay. You forgive because you hope they will approve. You sacrifice because you hope they will finally see your worth. None of those are acts of strength. They are emotional transactions disguised as virtue. Machiavelli understood that people are driven less by gratitude than by self-interest. Most individuals remember what you failed to give far longer than everything you already sacrificed. That is why endless giving becomes a trap. The more you provide, the higher the expectation becomes. Eventually, your extraordinary effort becomes their minimum standard. Have you noticed it? The person who once thanked you for answering every message now becomes irritated if you take 2 hours to reply. The friend who admired your generosity now assumes your help is guaranteed. The family member who appreciated your support now acts offended when you finally protect your own schedule. That is not because people suddenly became evil. That is because human nature adapts. Luxury brands understand something psychology textbooks often explain with more complicated language. Scarcity creates perceived value. A waiting list increases desire. Unlimited supply destroys urgency. You do not stand outside a store for something that is always available. Yet you keep making yourself permanently available while wondering why nobody values your presence. Become the waiting list. Not because you want to manipulate people, but because your life deserves uninterrupted attention from its owner. Let's discuss another invisible thief of peace. Emotional contagion. Every room has a temperature. Spend enough time in a freezing room, and eventually your own body begins to shiver. Emotions work exactly the same way. Sit beside chronic complainers long enough, and their worldview becomes yours. Spend enough evenings with people addicted to drama, and your nervous system begins preparing for conflict even when nothing is wrong. The laws of human nature repeatedly points toward this reality. Emotions spread faster than logic. One anxious person can infect an entire room. One bitter person can poison an entire family. One cynical colleague can slowly convince everyone that ambition is pointless. This is why protecting your environment is not arrogance. It is psychological hygiene. You brush your teeth every day because decay happens gradually. You lock your front door because danger rarely announces itself. Yet you leave your mind completely unguarded, allowing anyone with unresolved anger, endless complaints, or constant negativity to move in without paying rent. Then you wonder why your thoughts feel heavy. The answer has been sitting beside you. Now consider the ocean. Rivers carry mud, debris, dead leaves, and pollution into it every single day. Yet the ocean remains vast because its size prevents contamination from defining it. Compare that to a stagnant pond. Drop a single rotten branch into a tiny pond, and the entire body of water begins to smell. Your mind becomes whatever size your inner world allows. If your identity depends entirely on other people's opinions, one insult destroys your confidence. One rejection ruins your week. One criticism keeps you awake at night. Become the ocean. Expand your purpose until petty people become nothing more than drifting leaves carried away by a current too powerful to stop. Many people cannot do this because they secretly believe suffering proves love. Ride that again. They measure devotion by exhaustion. They believe if something hurts, it must be meaningful. So they remain in draining friendships, manipulative relationships, dead-end careers, and one-sided family dynamics because leaving feels like betrayal. But what if the real betrayal is abandoning yourself? Greene admired those who mastered detachment because detached people cannot easily be manipulated. When your emotional buttons are exposed, anyone can control you. Praise becomes bait. Criticism becomes a leash. Guilt becomes a prison. The strongest person in any room is usually not the loudest. It is the least emotionally dependent. Notice how predators hunt. They never chase the strongest animal in the herd first. They search for hesitation. They search for injury. They search for isolation without awareness. Human predators are no different. Manipulators study emotional hunger. They recognize the desperate need to be liked. They sense the inability to say no. They detect the fear of abandonment. Then they move in, not with violence, with charm, with sympathy, with promises, with carefully measured affection that disappears the moment you stop serving their interests. You think you met someone who finally understands you. Often you have simply met someone who accurately identified your unmet needs. That realization should disturb you, because until you fill those needs yourself, you will continue renting your soul to anyone willing to offer temporary comfort. You will mistake attention for connection, intensity for loyalty, and familiarity for trust. This is how intelligent people become prisoners without ever seeing a cage. Let's talk about the chains you cannot touch. Most people imagine attachment as love. It is not. Attachment says, I cannot function without you. Love says, I choose you, but I remain whole without you. Attachment hands another person the keys to your emotional state. Love keeps responsibility where it belongs. Within yourself, that distinction changes everything. The person attached to approval checks their phone every 5 minutes. The detached person checks it when it serves their priorities. The attached person panics when someone becomes distant. The detached person observes the distance and adjusts accordingly. The attached person chases explanations. The detached person studies actions. Law 4 of the 48 laws of power tells you to always say less than necessary. Most people think this law is about sounding mysterious. It is much deeper than that. Every unnecessary explanation is an invitation for negotiation. Every defense of your boundaries signals uncertainty. Every attempt to convince someone who has already judged you places your peace into their hands. Stop arguing for your own worth. When someone says, "You've changed," resist the urge to defend yourself. Instead say, "You're right." Silence, nothing more. Watch what happens. People become uncomfortable when they cannot control the narrative. They expect resistance. They prepare for debate. They rehearse arguments before you even speak. Then you give them nothing. Their momentum collapses because conflict requires two participants. This is not weakness. It is strategic detachment. Imagine trying to punch cloud. There is nothing solid to strike. Your anger exhausts you while the cloud simply moves with the wind. Become psychologically difficult to grab. Not emotionally dead. Emotionally disciplined. This brings us to one of the most expensive habits you have ever developed. Over-explaining. Why do you explain every decision? Why do you justify every absence? Why do you apologize for protecting your own schedule? Because somewhere in your past, you learned that your needs required permission. That lesson is poison. You do not need a courtroom to leave a conversation that drains you. You do not need unanimous approval before ending a relationship that repeatedly disrespects you. You do not owe a detailed presentation every time you choose yourself. Instead of saying, "I'm so sorry, I've just been really busy and I've had a lot going on," say, "I'm unavailable." Stop. Let the sentence breathe instead of saying, "I feel bad but I don't think I can help this weekend." Say, "I won't be able to." Then move on. Confidence shortens sentences. Insecurity writes paragraphs. People often mistake excessive politeness for kindness when it is actually fear wearing expensive clothes. They hope that if they soften every word, nobody will become upset. But someone who benefits from your lack of boundaries will always become upset the moment boundaries appear. Their disappointment is not proof you made the wrong decision. It is proof they lost access they had mistaken for ownership. Now let's discuss something even darker. Some people do not merely drain your peace. They feed on it. You have met them. Every conversation circles back to their crisis. Every solution you offer is ignored because solving the problem would end the attention. Every week brings a new emergency. Every victory in your life somehow becomes their tragedy. You become what some call an emotional tampon, absorbing, soaking up, carrying emotions that were never yours to begin with. Eventually, you no longer know which sadness belongs to you. That is the hidden cost. You start believing your exhaustion is normal because it arrives gradually. Like a slow leak in a tire, you adapt to lower and lower pressure until one day you cannot move forward at all. The laws of human nature teaches that people reveal themselves through patterns, not promises. Stop listening to declarations. Watch repetitions. Do they only call when they need something? Do they disappear when you need support? Do they celebrate your failures more enthusiastically than your successes? Do they interrupt you? Do they mock your ambitions? Do they subtly encourage you to stay small because your growth makes them uncomfortable? Patterns never lie. Words often do. There is another illusion that keeps people trapped: history. I've known them for 10 years, so what? I can't leave now. Why not? Time invested is not a reason to continue investing. If a ship is sinking, the number of years you spent building it does not change the fact that it is filling with water. People stay because they worship the past. Power belongs to those who build the future. Greene often admired individuals who reinvented themselves completely, because identity is not a prison unless you insist on living inside yesterday's version of yourself. You are allowed to outgrow people. You are allowed to outgrow places. You are allowed to outgrow habits that once protected you but now imprison you. The snake does not apologize for shedding its skin. Imagine if it refused. Imagine if it clung to dead skin because it felt guilty. Growth would become impossible. Yet that is exactly what many people do. They cling to expired friendships, outdated beliefs, inherited fears, and worn-out identities because familiarity feels safer than transformation. Comfort has destroyed more potential than failure ever could. This brings us to the herd. The herd fears separation because survival once depended on belonging. Thousands of years ago, isolation often meant death. Your nervous system still remembers that ancient reality even though your circumstances have changed. Today, the greatest danger is often the opposite: remaining with the wrong crowd. The herd rewards sameness. The lone wolf earns freedom. Yes, the lone wolf experiences silence. But silence is infinitely less dangerous than constant manipulation disguised as companionship. People will tell you that boundaries make you cold. Mice them. A castle without walls is not generous. It is vulnerable. A nation without borders is not compassionate. It is exposed. Your mind deserves the same protection. Every boundary is simply a wall built around something valuable. If nothing valuable existed inside you, nobody would spend so much energy trying to cross those walls. Notice how manipulators react when you become unavailable. First comes confusion, then guilt, then anger, then negotiation. Finally, replacement. Do not fear that final stage, celebrate it. Because anyone who replaces you the moment you stop overgiving was never connected to your character. They were connected to your usefulness. There is a difference. Usefulness expires. Character endures. Consider the image of a massive rock standing in the middle of a violent storm. The rain lashes against it. The wind screams around it. Waves crash into it with relentless force. Yet the rock does not negotiate with the weather. It does not beg the storm to become gentler. It simply remains unmoved. Become that rock, not stubborn, stable. There is enormous power in becoming emotionally predictable to yourself, while remaining psychologically unreadable to everyone else. Law 33 tells you to discover each man's thumbscrew. Manipulators practice this instinctively. They search for your guilt, your loneliness, your need for validation, your fear of rejection. So remove the handle, heal the wound they keep pressing. When they realize guilt no longer controls you, they try obligation. When obligation fails, they try nostalgia. Remember everything we've been through? Yes, you remember. You also remember how much it cost. Mirror should teach, not trap. The strongest detachment is not dramatic. It is quiet. You stop arguing. You stop announcing. You stop threatening to leave. You simply leave. No speeches, no revenge, no performance, just absence. And as Law 16 quietly reminds you, absence has a strange effect on people. What they ignored in your constant presence often becomes impossible to ignore once it is gone. They suddenly remember your value only after discovering that access is no longer guaranteed. But be careful. Do not detach so they will chase you. Detach because you refuse to chase the version of yourself that kept abandoning its own peace. That is the final shift. The one most people never make. They think detachment is a tactic. It is not. It is an identity. A tactic says I'll become unavailable so they appreciate me. An identity says, I no longer build my life around people who require my exhaustion to feel secure. There is an enormous difference. One still depends on their reaction. The other depends only on your standards. This is where Robert Greene's philosophy quietly separates the powerful from the powerless. The powerless react. They wait for permission. They wait for apologies. They wait for closure. They wait for someone else to change before allowing themselves to move forward. The powerful understand something far less comforting. Closure is rarely given. It is taken. The moment you stop demanding explanations from people committed to misunderstanding you, you reclaim your mind. The moment you stop replaying old conversations hoping to discover the perfect sentence that would have changed everything, you free yourself from a prison built entirely from imagination. How many nights have you sacrificed to conversations that exist only inside your head? How many mornings have you entered already exhausted because you fought invisible battles before the day even began? Stop it. Your imagination is a magnificent servant. It becomes a ruthless tyrant when left undisciplined. The mind loves unfinished stories. It searches endlessly for missing pieces. That is why betrayal echoes for years while ordinary days disappear from memory. Your brain keeps whispering, figure it out, understand them, fix it. No, understand yourself instead. That is where your power lives. Let's discuss the people who mistake your silence for weakness. They will. When you stop arguing, they will assume you have nothing to say. When you stop chasing, they will assume you have nothing to offer. When you stop explaining, they will believe they have won. Let them. Law 3 tells you to conceal your intentions. There is no greater concealment than refusing to reveal your emotional state to people who intend to exploit it. Not every attack deserves a response. Not every insult deserves your attention. Not every opinion deserves space inside your mind. Think of an archer standing before a quiver filled with arrows. Would a skilled archer waste every arrow shooting at shadows? Of course not. Each arrow matters. Your attention is no different. Every minute you spend arguing with fools is a minute stolen from mastering yourself. Every ounce of emotional energy invested in proving your worth is energy unavailable for building it. The powerful become selective, the weak become reactive. There is another uncomfortable truth. Some people are terrified of your peace because it exposes their chaos. When you refuse to gossip, they call you boring. When you refuse unnecessary conflict, they call you cold. When you refuse manipulation, they call you selfish. Listen carefully. People often rename the qualities they cannot control. Your discipline becomes arrogance. Your boundaries become attitude. Your independence becomes distance. Your self-respect becomes ego. Do not accept definitions written by those who benefited from your lack of standards. Sprout your own. The art of seduction teaches that mystery attracts attention because the unknown invites imagination. Most people ruin this advantage by explaining every move, sharing every plan, and broadcasting every emotion. They leave nothing for the world to discover. Stop narrating your life. Move differently. Build quietly. Disappear when necessary. Return stronger. Let your results introduce you. The oak tree never announces that it is growing, yet year after year it becomes impossible to ignore. You do not need louder words. You need deeper roots. Now imagine two fires. One burns dry wood, the other burns itself. That is the difference between purpose and people-pleasing. Purpose consumes obstacles and creates light. People-pleasing consumes you. Eventually there is nothing left except smoke. This is why so many successful people still feel empty. They climbed a mountain chosen by someone else. They earned applause from people they do not even admire. They became experts at collecting validation while becoming strangers to themselves. Do not confuse attention with fulfillment. Crowds applaud entertainers. History remembers individuals who mastered themselves. Mastery, as Greene reminds us, demands ruthless elimination. Every great craftsman eventually learns that excellence is not created by adding more. It is created by removing distraction. The sculptor removes stone. The writer removes unnecessary words. The warrior removes hesitation. You must remove what weakens your mind, not tomorrow. Now detach from conversations that leave you questioning your value. Detach from routines that poison your body while pretending to comfort it. Detach from environments where mediocrity is rewarded and ambition is mocked. Detach from the endless need to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. You cannot carry dead weight and expect to move like someone free. The mountain climber understands this instinctively. The higher the climb, the lighter the backpack must become. Every unnecessary item eventually feels like a brick. Look at your life. How many bricks are you carrying simply because you have carried them for years? Old resentment, old guilt, old promises, old identities, old fears, none of them belong at the summit. You keep asking why life feels heavy, because you insist on dragging yesterday into tomorrow. Machiavelli observed that fortune favors those prepared to act decisively when the moment arrives. Indecision is expensive. Every day you remain trapped in a draining environment, your confidence quietly erodes. Every week you postpone a difficult conversation, anxiety compounds interest against you. Every month you tolerate disrespect, your standards sink lower without you even noticing. Delo is rarely neutral. It almost always serves the problem. You tell yourself, maybe they'll change. Maybe. But will you? That is the better question. Because while you are waiting for someone else to become different, your own life is passing without permission. There is something strangely liberating about accepting that not everyone is meant to continue the journey with you. Some people were teachers. Some were warnings. Some were tests. Some were mirrors reflecting the parts of yourself that still needed healing. Not everyone was meant to become a destination. When you stop forcing permanence onto temporary people, disappointment loses much of its power. A train does not mourn every passenger who steps off at a station. It continues moving, so should you. One day people will say you have changed. Smile. They are right. You no longer answer every demand. You no longer negotiate your boundaries. You no longer apologize for protecting your peace. You no longer confuse sacrifice with love. You no longer measure your worth by your usefulness. You have become difficult to manipulate because you are no longer desperate to be accepted. That is what truly unsettles people, not your distance. Your freedom. Freedom is intimidating because it reminds others of the cages they still refuse to leave. You are no longer begging for a seat at tables where your presence was merely tolerated. You are building your own. You are no longer chasing people who repeatedly choose convenience over commitment. You are choosing yourself, not from arrogance, from clarity. You are no longer allowing guilt to become the currency of the slave. You spend a different currency now, self-respect. And unlike approval, self-respect gains value the more you protect it. Understand this before you leave. Detachment does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop sacrificing your future to rescue people determined to remain where they are. It means you stop confusing chaos with passion. It means you stop handing strangers the authority to define your emotional weather. You become like the ocean, deep enough to absorb storms without becoming one. You become like the mountain, unmoved by winds that exhaust everyone else. You become like the diamond, valuable not because you demand attention, but because you refuse to make yourself common. This is not about becoming colder. It is about becoming clearer. Clear about who deserves your time. Clear about what deserves your energy. Clear about the standards that will govern your life when nobody is watching. You are shedding the dead skin of your old self, the version that apologized for existing, the version that feared loneliness more than disrespect, the version that mistook endless availability for love. That version served its purpose. It taught you painful lessons, but it cannot accompany you where you are going. The next version of you walks lighter, speaks less, observes more, chooses carefully, leaves quickly when peace is threatened, returns only where respect is mutual. That is not a strategy, that is power. So ask yourself one question and answer it with complete honesty. What is the one person, habit, belief, or environment you already know is draining your peace, yet you continue holding on to out of fear? Write your answer in the comments, or write it down where only you can see it. The moment you name what is stealing your peace, you begin taking your power back. And if you're committed to mastering the laws of power, mastering yourself, and becoming impossible to manipulate, subscribe and continue this journey. Because the strongest person you will ever conquer is the person you used to be.